You are listening to your Europa League futures preview here, covering the round of 16 on the Soccer Gambling Podcast. You can follow the Soccer Gambling Podcast on Twitter at SGP Soccer. That's at SGP Soccer. You can follow the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. They are at the SGP Network. That's at the SGP Network. You can also follow my other Twitter account, which is at LockBettingCom. That's at LockBettingCom. At LockBettingCom is the Twitter account for LockBetting.com, which is my premium pay service that has delivered 117th month in a row of transparent track profit. It's transparent track because you can find a spreadsheet for every month at the LockBetting.com site or on request. Or you can do some quick due diligence by looking at the Twitter account at LockBettingCom. The pinned tweet is always the P&L from the previous months. At the moment, you can see the month of February, which actually featured our Super Bowl card, which capped off a very strong NFL season. You can head over to lockbetting.com to sign up for any package you want. But if you want to get a long-term package, I'm talking 3 months, 6 months, or an entire year, there are huge discounts on our Gumroad site. Shoot me a DM on the Twitter account at lockbetting.com for more information, and I'll forward you to the Lockbetting Gumroad account so you can get 3 month, 6 month, or 12-month discounts for the service. Moving on with this edition of the Soccer Gambling Podcast, this is a Europa League futures show. We have 16 teams left, so we are going to look at that futures market. We're not going to look at the game between Man United and Betis too much here on this show. We'll gloss over it quickly because there is a detailed preview over on BetMUFC. That's also where we look back at Manchester United's terrible result at the weekend against Liverpool. But Man United are the favourites to win this competition at the moment. The winner of the Man United and Barcelona game was always going to be the favourite in my opinion. And Manchester United were the side who came out on top, making them now the 5-2 plus 250 favourite to win this season's Europa League. Arsenal, who were the favourites at the start of that round because Man United and Barcelona were playing each other, have dropped to the second favourites here at 3-1. Juve are at 8-1 with AS Roma at 12-1. So the market goes EPL, Serie A. We then got our first La Liga team, which is Sevilla. They are available at 12-1. They have won this competition more than anyone else, but this season in La Liga, they are in a relegation battle, which is why they're so low down in the market. Union Berlin in the top 4 in Germany at the moment. They are at 14-1 with Bayer Leverkusen, who should have been in the top 4 in Germany this season, but have been very poor, at 16-1. Real Sociedad of La Liga and currently in the La Liga top 4 at 20-1. Real Betis, who are just outside that top 4 and play Manchester United in the next round, 25-1. Feyenoord from the Dutch League at 25-1. Everybody else is bigger than 33-1. That's Freiburg 33-1. Sporting Lisbon 33-1. Shakhtar Donetsk 40-1. Fenerbahce 100-1. Union St. Gilles at 100-1. And FTC at 200-1. So this is clearly a competition where the books are expecting an all-English final if the two sides can avoid each other. Now, I believe that both these two teams should get through the round of 16 ties. They haven't been handed the easiest ties, with Arsenal travelling to Sporting Lisbon for the first leg and Man United hosting Real Betis. But they ultimately should come through, and I agree, they should come through every possible tie here if they can avoid each other. The only reason why I feel that the bookies have got it right by installing Manchester United as the favourites rather than Arsenal, who currently sit top of the EPL, is for that exact reason. Arsenal sit top of the EPL. Therefore, I think going into this competition, the EPL will be Arsenal's primary focus and will continue to be, probably even more so as they progress through this competition. Manchester United, after winning the EFL Cup, have already achieved their pre-season target of winning a trophy and being in the top 4, providing they don't have a disastrous end to the season. Manchester United just need to do enough to stay in the top 4 and to possibly win another trophy, which is a bonus because they are in contention for both the FA Cup and the Europa League. And I feel that Manchester United will be fully committed to achieving that bonus. I don't expect to see rotated teams in the final 3 FA Cup games if we get to play 3 more FA Cup games. And I don't expect to see any rotated teams in the Europa League, particularly today where we're looking for a bounce back in the game against Liverpool. I do expect to see rotated teams in the EPL once the top four is confirmed and once the title hopes or lack of title hopes are confirmed as well. And that's already almost at that point after the 7-0 defeat at the weekend. It is a monumental gap to make up now. Manchester United aren't likely to do it. I don't think we're going to do it. I don't think we're going to come close to it. And therefore, I do feel once the top four is secure, it doesn't matter if we finish third or fourth, as long as we finish third or fourth. I believe that Manchester United will fully focus on this competition and the potential FA Cup final that I expect us to be in as well, after being given a favourable draw against Fulham. But again, it's key for United to avoid certain teams. We don't really want to play Arsenal over two legs, and we don't really want to play Manchester City in the FA Cup semi-final. If we can avoid both of those, we will give ourselves a great opportunity by arriving at two finals, one of which I expect to be against Manchester City, the other whom I expect to be against Arsenal. But I would say Manchester United are more likely to be in a final here than Arsenal, given Arsenal's prioritisation of the EPL. And if Arsenal do come up against the likes of Juventus or Roma, I would not be as confident in Arsenal with a rotated lineup dispatching those two teams than I would be a full-strength Manchester United lineup. But first of all, before we get to looking ahead to those games, both of these two teams do need to take care of business in the round of 16, and we'll be talking about those round of 16 fixtures shortly. Before we do that, let me take a quick time out to tell you guys about WinBet. WinBet is, of course, the official online sportsbook of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. WinBet is active in a bunch of states and a ton of ways to win, including live betting and same-game parlays, aka WinBet's Build Your Own Bet. March Madness is almost here, plus plenty of ways to win getting down on the NBA, NHL and XFL. Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100, get $100, limited state availability. And of course, our DGens only. If you hit the biggest long shot parlay of the week, you get a $1,000 free credit. There's so much to choose from. All we have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/winbet so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. The offer subject to change. Terms and conditions available at winbet.com. You must be 21 or older and present in the state will pay for WinBet is available. If you or someone you know is a gambler problem, call 1-800-522-4700. So as mentioned before, we are going to look at these round of 16 futures markets. The 90-minute markets, so the individual game, all of these first legs are all covered over at lockbetting.com. We've done that throughout the season for the Europa League, primarily focusing on the futures markets here for the Europa League on the Soccer Gambling Podcast. But the individual games, the 90-minute games, that's always been a Lock Betting exclusive podcast. So head over to lockbetting.com to get a breakdown of all of the 90-minute markets for today's matches. We are here to look at the futures, and we'll start here with the game between Sporting Lisbon and Arsenal. This could potentially be a tricky one, with Sporting originally starting in the Champions League, now looking for Europa League glory. The books have Arsenal as the 1-3 minus 300 favourites, with Sporting priced up here as a 5-2 underdog. The first leg here is going to be absolutely key, because if Sporting can put some pressure on Arsenal through the first leg, then we could see a real cup tie here. It just depends, really, for me, where Arsenal's priorities lie. Now, I know their priorities mainly lie in the EPL, but it's just a case of seeing how significantly rotated this Arsenal team is, whether it's a case of 11 changes or whether it's a case of 3 or 4 changes. I'm not expecting 11 changes here. At the end of the day, this still represents an opportunity for Arsenal to pick up a major trophy. And I think if Arsenal can come away here with a positive result, which for me would just be avoiding a defeat away to Sporting, then they should be able to finish things off in the second leg at the Emirates, where Arsenal have been incredibly strong so far this season. The only worrying bit of data here for me is the fact that Sporting have only lost 2 of their last 12 matches, whilst Arsenal have only kept 2 clean sheets in 9 games, whilst the Gunners have failed to win 2 of their last 4 road outings. So Sporting should be able to cause Arsenal problems. Sporting should be able to at least score a goal here in this home leg. We saw a 1-1 scoreline when Sporting were at home with Midtjylland, And we also saw the score when they entertained Tottenham in October. So it would not surprise me to see Sporting be able to find the back of the net today, whilst Arsenal do come away from here with the draw. Arsenal will make some changes here for this tie. I'm expecting a close game. I'm not expecting Arsenal to run away with it, whilst I'm not expecting Sporting to take care of business and put Arsenal in a huge predicament as we approach the second leg. So I think a draw, specifically a 1-1 draw, could offer up some value here for the first leg, which is available at 6-1. And I think as a result of that 1-1 draw, Arsenal will have the advantage and will be able to finish things off at the Emirates. I don't think there's much value in the line price of 1-3 minus 300 on Arsenal to qualify, simply because this is not Arsenal's priority this season. So when you invest your money, you ideally want to be in a situation where you're getting everything possible from your selection to make sure that it's going to get it done. And when you already know that there is a different priority and that this is secondary in the list of prioritization, that almost puts me off immediately. And it would not surprise me to see Sporting Lisbon putting Arsenal in a compromising position and getting a positive result out of this game, which would in turn give you better line value on Arsenal in the future. So I think for this Arsenal selection, it's a wait and see process, with Arsenal obviously prioritising the EPL and rotating 3 or 4, giving you not much line value in the future, and not even really on the money line here for the first leg, with Arsenal being priced up as short as even money in some places. Up next, we look at the tie between Union Berlin and Union St. Gilloise, where Union Berlin, who are flying in the Bundesliga, are the favourites to qualify at the price of 2-5. Union St. Gilloise are available here at 2-1. Union should have enough to qualify here, but ultimately it's very important that they are able to win the home leg. If they can win the home leg, even by a 1-0 scoreline, because I do expect a tight and cagey first leg opener, that should be enough for them to go through, as I do believe that they should be able to pick off Union St. Gilloise as they chase the game. Union met in the Europa League group stage, and both games ended in 1-0 wins for the away team. Yet Union Berlin's form obviously suggests that they should be able to break that trend here. Both of the previous head-to-heads, of course, finished 1-0, so we could be looking at an under here for the first leg specifically. But I think overall, Union Berlin should be able to find a way to go through. They have been absolutely sensational in the Bundesliga so far this season. They've only lost 1 of their 17 home games. And Royal Union have gone winless across 4 of their last 5 games coming into this. So you may look at the historical data and say this is a red-hot under, and it probably is for the first leg. But when we're looking at the tie, I think you have to go with Union Berlin for what they've done in Germany so far this season. They sit just behind Dortmund and Bayern Munich. At one point, they were top of the table, and many thought that they would drop off after the World Cup, but they didn't. They only strengthened, and they only fell off the horse once they were beaten convincingly away to Bayern Munich, a result that can happen to anybody, and that has seemed to cause a little bit of a drop-off for Union Berlin form-wise, but ultimately it's still been a very, very strong season, and they'll be looking to cap that off with a very strong Europa League run here, and I think they are the pick here against Union Gilloise in this tie. Up next, we look at the tie here between Bayer Leverkusen and Ferencváros, or FTC, as I prefer to call them, just to make it easier. Bayer Leverkusen are the strong favourites in the first leg, and even stronger favourites to win the tie overall. They're at 1-7, whereas Ferencváros are available here at 4-1. Can't really make a case for FTC here in this one, especially after the way that Bayer Leverkusen came back from the dead against a strong team in Monaco. That was a far more difficult tie than this one. Obviously, there is zero value at 1-7. Therefore, we will pass on this game. I feel that Bayer Leverkusen, if they apply themselves and they fully concentrate, they should be able to have this done after a single leg. They came through a tough tie against Monaco, and their defence should find things a lot easier here against FTC. If they're able to put up 2-3 goals at home, that should put them in a strong enough position to see it through in the second leg. 3 of Bayer Leverkusen's last 4 home wins have actually come with a clean sheet, whereas FTC have lost 4 of the last 6 Europa League away games without even scoring a goal. So if Leverkusen can keep a very rare clean sheet, I'm confident they'll be able to score 2 or 3 goals here tonight, and should be able to get the job done in the first leg against an FTC team who have only won 1 of the last 4 Hungarian league games. And this is a huge step up from the Hungarian league if we get anywhere close to the top version of Bayer Leverkusen, which has popped up more often under Xabi Alonso than it did at the start of the season. He has improved things, although it hasn't been a revolutionary in any way, because Bayer Leverkusen are still struggling some weeks. But I think his team have more than enough to get through this tie against FTC. Up next, we've got a tie between Roma and Sociedad, and this is a very, very even one, possibly the most even tie we've had so far, with Roma only being the 5-4 favourites on the money line at home. While surprisingly, especially when you look at the outright winners odds, where Roma were ranked ahead of Real Sociedad are the 4-5 minus 125 favourites to qualify from the tie, with Roma priced up as the even money plus 100 underdogs. Again, the first leg will be key here. Roma's best results have come at home this season, and they will need to take a home victory over to Real Sociedad to stand a chance here. Real Sociedad are a side who have already won away at Old Trafford earlier on in the season, but that was a very different version of Erik ten Hag's Manchester United, a team that featured Cristiano Ronaldo in it, for example. And I don't think they'll be able to come away with such a result here. I do believe that Roma will be able to hold the edge as we approach the second leg, and I do feel that will be enough to give Roma the edge to go through. I don't like when teams are chasing first leg leads down, which is what Real Sociedad could be doing if they lose this first game, and therefore I am going to lean Roma at the underdog price. Roma are super strong on their own patch, and Sunday's 1-0 victory at home to Juventus means they have now won 7 of the last 8 at home, whilst Real Sociedad on a poor run of form, having only won 1 of their last 7. I think Juve represent a stronger opponent than Real Sociedad. Despite a 15-point deduction, Juve have been in very, very strong form and even gave themselves an outside chance of qualifying for the European places with the run as they approached the weekend just 6 points outside of the European places, almost overcoming a 15-point deficit. So losing to Roma was a huge setback. The data actually said that Juve were a live underdog going into that game against Roma because of their form. But Roma, it must be noted, are a very different team at home than they are away from home, which is why it's key for them to pick up a victory, and perhaps a 2-goal victory to take across to Real Sociedad, because the tie will still be relatively wide open if Roma do only go there with a single-goal victory. And if they go there with no victory at all, suddenly my opinion completely switches over to Real Sociedad. But I don't expect that to be the case. I do expect Roma to come through with a first leg lead, and then they'll be in a position where they can sit back while Sociedad chase the game, allowing Roma to take advantage of the space on the counter-attack. And I do believe, despite the fact that they've massively underperformed their XG so far this season, Roma should be good enough to see it through if they are able to set up that situation for themselves after this first leg tie. Before we move on to the second half of the games, let me let you guys know that we are still brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is your home for off-season NFL best ball drafts, but they also got you covered for a ton of other daily games, including NBA, NHL, and PGA. Underdog Fantasy is a great way to get down on your favourite player props if they're not already available in your state. Head over to underdogfantasy.com and use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's underdogfantasy.com and the promo code SGPN. So we are going to simply gloss over the Manchester United tie because that's the first tie out of the second half of the games. Man United, a clear favourite tonight at Old Trafford to bounce back at 2-5, whereas they're the 1-4 favourites overall to qualify against Real Betis. It's difficult for me to look past Manchester United here after getting rid of Barcelona. There's a 21-point gap in La Liga between Barcelona and Real Betis, and that for me is enough to think that Manchester United are going to qualify. And although the short price is not appealing, it is something that I feel will cash and could potentially act as a parlay piece for you here, with Manchester United making their way through to the quarterfinals of the Europa League. Moving on, we look at the remaining three ties. We start with the one between Juventus and Freiburg of the Bundesliga. Juventus are the 3-5 favourites to win the first leg, and overall to win the tie, they're priced up at 1-2 minus 200, with Freiburg here at 13-8. This represents Juve's main chance of a trophy this season, and I do believe they will be all in this competition. And what it mainly represents is their main chance to qualify for the Champions League, because they are not going to get there via their league position. Freiburg will be a tough opponent. They've only lost one of their last 8 games in all competitions, and back-to-back draws with Leverkusen and Borussia Mönchengladbach suggest that this is going to be a tough home leg against Juve, who've already actually lost twice at home in the Champions League group stages so far this season. So it hasn't been a fortress for them, and it will need to be if they want to qualify here, because they are at the slight disadvantage of playing the first leg at home first of all, and they will need a big result in order to go through. When I look at Juve and I look at a team with their back against the wall, that's what makes me want to take them. They are a side who have massively underperformed so far this season, but they are also a side who have had to overcome injuries, and they were overcoming those injuries to a certain extent. Yes, they had a poor run of results after it was announced they had a 15-point deduction, but prior to that, they had got themselves back into the title race. Coming into the resumption period after the World Cup, Juventus looked like the closest challengers for the league because of the great run they put together before the World Cup break. Obviously, the 15-point deduction set them back, as did the hammering at the hands of Napoli, which damaged their wonderful defensive record. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a strong team who can perform on their day. This is certainly a team who can defend, and I believe those defensive performances will be key, especially on the road as we move forward in this competition. They are actually my dark horses to win it. Therefore, for me, they are an automatic selection here to get the win in this tie. I'm going to take Juventus to qualify at the price of 1-2 minus 200. And for me, they make up a decent parlay piece that you could look to tag together, potentially alongside Manchester United to qualify from this round. Final 2 games here, and we look at the one here between Sevilla and Fenerbahce next, where Sevilla are the 4-5 favourites on the money line to nick a home win, and they are the narrow 4-6 minus 150 favourites to come through in this tie, with Fenerbahce priced at 11-10. For me, I know they're doing very poorly in the league this season, but they were doing more poorly before they made a managerial change. They've now put themselves in a position to be safe this season. They obviously need to get themselves a few more wins, but I don't think as we get to the later stages of this competition that Sevilla will still be struggling with relegation. And therefore, once again, that makes them a dark horse for this competition. Their pedigree alone, having won this more than any other team in history, makes them a dark horse for this competition. Sevilla have been strong at home this season, despite this disappointing domestic season they're having. They have won 5 of their last 6 games on their own patch, and I do believe they'll add Fenerbahce to the list. And this is a common reoccurring theme here. Winning the first leg is key to winning the tie, because it does put the other team in a position to chase the game. And in this current day and age, teams are very, very well rehearsed when it comes to counter-attacking football and being able to execute it. And I do believe Fenerbahce will be in trouble if Sevilla win this first leg and put themselves in a position where they're able to counter-attack in the spaces left by Fenerbahce as they try to claw themselves back into the game. If Sevilla can win this first leg, and if they can score the first goal in Turkey, this tie will be done and dusted, and I do see some value on Sevilla at 4-6 minus 150 to qualify based on their pedigree in this competition alone. The final game, or the final tie we look at here, is Shakhtar Donetsk and Feyenoord. Shakhtar are the 2-1 home dogs for the first leg, and overall Feyenoord are the strong 2-5 favourites to qualify, with Shakhtar Donetsk here priced up at 7-4. Shakhtar performed miracles so far to get to this stage. Nobody expected a Ukrainian team to be battling this hard at this late stage of the competition. I don't think they're helped by the fact they are playing their home games in neutral territory. Shakhtar have only won one of their 4 home matches in Warsaw this season, and therefore having one game on neutral territory and having one game at home does give Feyenoord a significant advantage here. I think Shakhtar's European involvement ends. I'm not even confident that they'll win the first leg, and therefore if Feyenoord can take a positive result into the second leg where they just need to win the game against a Shakhtar team who are obviously going through a lot, had a lot of other distractions, I think Feyenoord will be able to finish the job. So despite the fact that 2-5 is short, I actually think it does offer up some value in this situation, as I do believe Feyenoord will end Shakhtar's European pursuits in this round and make their way through to the Europa League quarter-final. Closing out with your lock for the show. Lots of things I like here for the futures markets. Lots of little combinations that you could possibly put together. I will be releasing those plays over at lockbetting.com via the soccer package. We've had a strong season in the Champions League and strong season in the Europa League so far this season, and we'll be looking for that to continue. That's also where I'll be looking at the Europa Conference League as well. So your free lock here for this show is going to be on Sevilla to qualify. Sevilla in the Europa League, it's just magic. It's just two things that go together. They seem to turn up in this competition. They seem to raise their game, and I think the home fans will be fully behind them tonight. I think that will give them the advantage that they need to take a lead over to the first leg, which should be enough to see them through. So your lock once again is Sevilla to qualify at the price of 4-6 minus 150. Obviously, if they don't get the job done tonight, there is still an opportunity for them in Turkey. But I do believe the home form is key. Let's make no mistake about it. Sevilla have had a poor season so far domestically, but they have won 5 of their last 6 games on their own patch, and I see no reason why they can't add Fenerbahce to it, especially when you look at the fact that Sevilla have kept clean sheets in 4 of the last 5 at home. And if they do win without conceding a goal, especially if they can put together a 2-0 or a 3-0 scoreline, will be an absolute dreamland with this future selection. But for me, even one goal could be enough, because that puts Fenerbahce in a position where they need to chase the game and puts Sevilla in a position where they can sit back and look for opportunities on the counter. Therefore, I'm backing the Europa League masters that are Sevilla to get it done once again. That's it for me. Good luck of all your bets as always, and thanks for listening.